Our guest today is president of the Chicago Transit Authority. He was appointed 10 months ago. From 2005 to 2007, our guest today served as Chief of Staff to Chicago Mayor Richard M. Daley. Prior to serving as Chief of Staff, he served as Director of the Office of Emergency Management and Communications. Our guest today went to OEMC after serving in the Chicago Police Department for 9 years, where he was a beat cop on some of the toughest streets in Chicago. He was born in Tel Aviv, Israel, and raised in LaGrange, Illinois. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the City Club of Chicago, the president of the Chicago Transit Authority, Ron Huberman. Ron? All right, so have some fun. How are you?
Whoops. And I don't have anything on my screen here, so I'm hoping, let me see if this works. Nothing like starting with a quick technical issue. We'll give it one quick try and see what happens. Oh, there we go. All right, we're in good shape. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm excited to see a really great crowd here. Let me just start by first thanking Jay Doherty and the City Club. You know, I think one of the great things about Chicago and Chicago's history, looking at it many years back, is that government has always partnered with the private sector in really, really meaningful ways. And there's always been open dialogue, and there's always been a great partnership. And I think organizations like the City Club that brings everyone together to talk about issues that are meaningful for everyone is critical. So I want to thank Jay and his whole team at the City Club. You know, it's interesting. It's 10 short months ago, and it feels a little longer than 10 months. Mayor Daley appointed me, made a recommendation to the CTA board to be its president. And at the time, I can tell you, I honestly had no idea what I was getting into. Sometimes you think you know what you're getting into, and then you get there. People often describe the job of Chief of Staff to Mayor Daley as one of the toughest jobs in town. He's a great leader who's visionary, demands a lot on a daily basis. I can finally say I found a job tougher than that in the first 10 months at the CTA. It's been very, very fun, and it's been a great challenge. One person who's missing today, who unfortunately had to be out of town, is Carol Brown. And Carol Brown is the chair of the CTA board. Carol is a phenomenal partner in helping move the CTA forward. And for those of you who know Carol, she's a banker. And so when it comes to numbers, Carol's always running around asking me all the right questions to lead me down the right road in making decisions. So Carol, unfortunately, had to be out of town today, so couldn't be here. But everything you're seeing up here today is a partnership between Carol and myself and the board. And I just want to take a quick minute and just recognize a few folks that are here. First of all, I have to tell you, I feel lucky because I think I have one of the greatest boards I could possibly have. And we've already recognized Nick Zagoda. Reverend Charles Robinson is here. Henry Chandler is here from the CTA board. And I don't think I could ask for a more supportive, innovative, forward-thinking board than the board I have, and it makes it very, very exciting to be here. I'm going to quickly recognize a few other members of the CTA team who are here with me as well. I'm glad we already introduced Steve Schlickerman and Jim Riley of the RTA. They are the unspoken, clear partners in all of this, moving forward in every way. They're great partners of the CTA, and I think going forward, when we work together on the legislation, we got a lot done, and so their leadership has been critical. I'm excited to see them here as well. And Andrew Gruber's here as well from the RTA, who's their general counsel, who did many, many drafts of the legislation that end up passing. So quickly, I'm going to just recognize the folks from the CTA because I am the very lucky guy who gets to be the talking face of the CTA, but it's the men and women of the CTA who make it happen every single day, and it's a long list, so I'm going to go through them quick. But Lydia Murray, that was already mentioned, is my right hand, left hand, and often my brain is my chief of staff. Jim Fowler is day 2 on the job. We were very lucky. We spent a very long time recruiting for a chief information officer, which is critical to the CTA. We recruited Jim from New York, where he was the CIO for the MTA. Not the MTA, sorry, New York City Transit, the largest transit system in the United States. He brought great innovation there, and we know he's going to bring great innovation to the CTA, so we're really ecstatic to have Jim here. Bill Mooney is here, and where'd Bill go? So Bill is the Chief Operating Officer of the CTA. Bill has 30 years experience with the CTA, and I can tell you there's no one who's more knowledgeable or cares more than Bill as the Chief Operating Officer of the CTA. And day in, day out, he's always giving us 100%. I've got a few other people here, and I know I'm going to probably miss someone. Teresa Mintel, who's Carol Brown Chief of Staff, is here as well. Keeps the board moving forward. Adam Case, who's Chief of Customer Communications, is here. And Adam is new to that position. I'll just say a quick word about Adam Case. Adam is 25 years old and runs a very significant part of the CTA. But being an innovator and someone who understands customer communications, I'm going to talk a lot today about the great work that Adam's doing at the CTA. Ravon Graham, who's an assistant in my office, also comes to us from operations. That's great. Just a few of the quick people. Tom Droz, who's the general manager of facilities here. Ruben Madrigal, who's the general manager of technical support. Lynn Cepeda, my vice president of budget. Right? I have to be honest with you, Lynn came in my office the other day and she said, Ron, you are spending money like a drunk sailor. All kidding aside, we then laughed because we're actually tightening the belt everywhere at the CTA. But Lynn is that great kind of honest budget director that always tells you exactly how the numbers look. I got to tell you, January, we're looking good for budget. And Aaron Kleiss is here, budget analyst as well. So just want to welcome all of them. One other last person that I'm going to dive in here is Brian Fabes, who's here at the table as well. Brian is not an employee of the CTA, but you wouldn't know it. So Brian is the CEO of the Civic Consulting Alliance, and he has leveraged close to $4 million in free pro bono consulting service for the CTA from the private sector by tirelessly selling our message of transformation. So I just want to publicly thank him as well. So let me dive right in. One of the things that you will... I missed someone. My chief of staff, I told you she's good, is like, you missed someone. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I am in such big trouble. My parents, why don't you stand up? Lily and Ellie Huberman are here. Okay, now I'm blushing. Someone asked me, are you nervous speaking before a large group? And I typically am not that nervous. I'm always at the edge of my seat when my mother's in the room. I was lucky enough to have her here as well as at the last City Club speech. And she had 2 napkins worth of notes, right? This made no sense. You spoke too fast. You were hunched over. But I'm ecstatic to have them here and having them living here in the city. So let me talk a little bit about what I'm going to go over. I normally talk fast, and I have a lot of material, so I may talk even faster. But there are really 5 pieces to this presentation. I'm going to start to talk about the money, where we were, where we are, and where we need to go, what we're doing to improve the experience of the customer at the CTA. I want to talk about what partnerships we're developing to get this done. I want to talk about the current strategic plan that we're implementing at the CTA. And then I want to talk a little bit about the future of where we're going. 1 through 4, in many ways, enable 5. So let's talk about the money. So if we go back and just rewind a short while ago, 10 months ago, well, quite literally a few months ago before the legislation, the CTA was faced with 4 fiscal crises. We had an $80+ million hole in our annual operating budget. We had a pension fund that was 32% funded and dropping like a rock. We had retiree health care that was being paid for out of the pension fund, causing a structural deficit that we simply could not continue moving forward with. And we had a massive capital deficit. Thanks to the work of a lot of people, and this is my chance where I asked some of our union leaders to be here, and I'm going to ask them to stand up right now as well. So Darrell, you mind standing up for me? And Calvin Tillery. Darrell is president of the Amalgamated Transit Union, and Calvin is a vice president. I can't say enough about the CTA unions. There's 2 things that I think are really important to say about our unions. The first thing is they care about the CTA and the institution, right? They're, of course, looking out after their members, right? And I can tell you they're calling me and knocking on my door every day about issues for their membership. But they also care about the institution of the CTA and making it better. And I could not be luckier to come to the CTA and have union leadership that cares about the service that we provide. They were also tremendous leaders within their own organizations in pushing for pension and health care reform. They understood that this was a piece of the pie in getting funding done. And the reality of the situation is the funding that passed that fundamentally changed transit funding in the region would never have happened if those gentlemen were not on board. And they were at the table, they were lobbying, and I owe them a great deal for that, and I think we all do, so thank you. Interestingly enough, it all broke through one night at 1:30 a.m. when we were negotiating. And at 1:30 a.m. that night, Jim Franzik and John Doerr, who were introduced earlier, were at the table with us, right? Trying to figure it out. And it was a lot of pain, a lot of compromise on everyone's part. But what we ended up with was fundamental reform to our pension and health care system. So I'm not going to talk too much about the reforms because people gloss over very quickly. But I can tell you that we, I believe, have put forth very fundamental change to the pension system. We're able to get funding to issue pension obligation bonds to the tune of $1 billion+, which immediately takes the pension fund to over 60% funded. We then established ratios of what we would pay in, management versus our management and our employees, to ensure that regardless of how the market does, the pension fund grows every year. So while on 1 year an employee may pay 6%, if it's a particularly bad year, we're insulated because we've all agreed to pay more to keep the trajectory going forward. The retirement age for retirees changed from 55 to 64. Many, many meaningful reforms to get our financial house in order. We created a retiree health care trust, which is for the first time being funded by not only retirees but active employees. This is a real innovation from the private sector in terms of looking at health care trusts and how it's funded. What this means for the long-term financial viability of the CTA is that we're going to fund this initial health care trust, but we are then in perpetuity out of the retiree health care business, and it will be managed by an independent trust that's independently financed. I can tell you for all the accountants in the room, being able to write off that liability long-term is what I think will enable the CTA to truly grow without growing liability. So I want to thank those gentlemen. I want to thank Jim Franzik and John Doerr. And Jim and John were the guys who came initially to the room with the Retiree Healthcare Trust concept, and they'd worked very closely with Jim Riley at the RTA on that concept. And so they brought really forward thinking to that particular issue. So we passed some good legislation, and it solved 3 of our 4 fiscal crises. We have a solvent operating system, we have a pension system getting healthier by the day, and we have a retiree healthcare system that's not eating into our operating budget, which leaves capital as obviously the next undiscovered country of funding. So I want to talk about how we're thinking about capital and how we think we not only need to have reform in pension and healthcare, but reform in capital. So you've often heard the number from the CTA, we're a 100-year-old system, that to get to a point of good repair, it's a $6.8 million number. And 6.8 billion, thank you. Yeah. 6.8 billion is a very, very challenging number, right? So I want to talk about how we want to get there and what some of the issues are. And that's before we even think about expansions. So one of the things that we've been spending a lot of time on is really understanding what is the true cost of operating the CTA. If we took ourselves out of the government realm and treated ourselves as a private sector corporation, right? And Mr. Fidel Marquez is doing this right now, right? We would be figuring out capital depreciation as part of our true cost of operating. And I'm going to talk about why that's so important. So what do I mean by capital depreciation? Well, let me give you an example. On an average day, our buses travel about 250,000 miles every single day. So if you think about the fact that the life of a bus is about 500,000 miles, right? That means we eat up half a bus a day. So if we think about rolling stock on bus, our capital depreciation, thank you. See, I get all verklempt when I talk about capital. The true cost of operating the CTA is not just the operating, but it's the capital depreciation just to maintain what we have. And right now we're working to quantify that capital depreciation. If we think about capital financing in the public sector altogether, and I'll step on a soapbox for 2 seconds here, right? When we invest in large capital systems, and we don't, in turn, then right on the front end identify the capital depreciation and the way to fund it, we are setting ourselves up for deteriorating assets over a period of time, which ends up costing us in the public sector and then to the public much more money to maintain those assets because they get in a bad state of good repair, and we spend tons of money to get it back in shape. So let me talk about what I mean, why it costs so much more money to not pay for it as you go. One is we're all bonding for capital, so we're paying interest. So if you look at it from the CTA, we are bonding, right, because it's the way it's been done, and quite frankly, if we didn't bond, we couldn't get anything into any kind of repair at the moment. But it means that we're paying interest. But if you knew the capital depreciation of the CTA, a private sector corporation would never be allowed to act that way. You would never be allowed to take your annual capital depreciation and bond out for it. Well, you'd probably be allowed, right? But your shareholders and other people would probably start to raise eyebrows saying, is that really smart? Because you're kind of mortgaging for what really should be an annual expense of truly operating the organization. The second problem with not having a fixed capital stream is the following, and let me talk about the Blue Line. The Blue Line project, which I'm very excited about, which will get us up to 70 miles per hour out to O'Hare Airport again, is a $100 million plus project that we'll finish by this fall. $100 million is a whole lot of money. The reason we're investing $100 million into that project is because what happened is there was no capital money over the 25-plus year life of that system to do what's called basic maintenance on it. And because of that, and because there was no dollars to do that, we're not able to fix it, but we're ripping it up and replacing it, which is a much more expensive endeavor. So if you look at basic rail ties here, right, it would be much cheaper to have the money to replace every fourth tie every other year is a much cheaper endeavor. If you look at the private railroads, right, who move freight, they do this because they realize if they don't do this, in X amount of years, they're going to have to rip up the whole bed and start over. So if we had a constant funding stream through capital depreciation, we wouldn't be doing $100 million track work. We'd be replacing every fourth tie every other year, keeping it safer, in better shape, avoiding slow zones, and doing it at a much significantly reduced cost. Let me give you another quick example. I've been spending a very long time talking to the people who manufacture buses. And there's about 4 large players who do it. And I've been talking to their CEOs, and I've been saying, how do we get the price of a bus down? Right, we're paying on a 40-foot bus about $450,000 a pop. That is not cheap, right? And that's the going rate in the market. In fact, we have a little bulk, so we get it a little bit cheaper. And I asked, how do we get the price down? What is your risk, right? So how do we write our bid specifications different so we can start to take a chunk out of the cost of a bus? What's your risk? What all the CEOs shared with me to a T is that the problem bus manufacturers have is that transit organizations like the CTA get money from a capital bill. We ramp up and order 500 buses. All of a sudden, they eat extraordinary cost in growing their assembly lines because they only build when we place an order. And then the market slows down and they spend a lot of money shrinking their assembly line. They said that we could potentially reduce the cost of a bus by 20% if we could just guarantee them a certain amount of buses over a certain amount of years. So a constant capital funding stream would suggest, we know the life of a bus is 12 years. Every year we should be replacing 1/12 of our buses. If we bid it out that way, we would eat 20% across one of our greatest capital costs. So I'm going to move away from capital other than say we're going to be working very hard to lobby for a constant capital stream that's not necessarily bonded against so that we can maintain things at a state of good repair and make sure that that money goes much further than it otherwise would, right? But to do that, we need to figure out exactly what our capital depreciation costs are, and that's what we're working hard to figure right now. Chairman Riley from the RTA has been putting together, I think, some very interesting plans on pay-as-you-go capital that I think is a much better return on investment for taxpayers, and I think it's going to be an interesting capital debate in Springfield. So let me talk a little bit about our capital depreciation strategy, because what we don't want to do in being good public stewards is just turn to the public, turn to the tax, turn to some other source to fund depreciation. We're going to need capital in order to fund a state of good repair and big projects. But we're going to try to attack capital maintenance that I talked about a little bit differently. So one is obviously a legislative strategy. Two is, and I'll talk more about this, we're going to squeeze more savings out of the CTA. And where we squeeze those savings, we're not moving them into the operating budget, but we're going to move them into doing pay-as-you-go capital where we can for a state of good repair. We also believe that we can leverage 3 sources of funding that will significantly grow our revenue stream without turning to the public. So the first is concessions. We carry 1.6 million rides a day and have people as a captive audience. We've been studying this concept of significantly growing a concessions program. So if you can imagine a more humanized CTA where you are on a L platform and there is a mini Starbucks or a mini Intelligentsia or a McDonald's Express and you get to walk over and buy a latte for $4. We've just made your experience with the CTA much greater, and the CTA can take a piece of that pie and start bringing dollars in. So you should expect to see a very big concessions program come out of the CTA. In fact, we are currently negotiating with a private sector partner to own it, right? So we get the upside. They manage it with a piece for them so that they sell lots of concession space, but it's part of our strategic plan. Next is transit-oriented development. And here we believe that, and we've identified 5 concrete sites that in the next 12 months we'll get bids on the street for private development, where we can use transit-oriented development to identify key areas to rebuild our infrastructure and at the same time build retail into them so that we can see dollars come into the CTA. And finally is advertising. We're currently renegotiating how we do advertising, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about it, but we're going to an electronic marketing strategy as opposed to static. So video screens versus plain, which we think will make a very big difference in the revenue that we can bring in. And over many years, we plan to more than double what we bring in from advertising. We want to use these dollars to begin to build a way to maintain capital at the CTA. Let me move on and talk about the customer, because that is obviously our most important asset, and it's the folks that we need to keep happy. And if we're being very honest with ourselves, they are the folks who are the most frustrated with us. So there's 4 key initiatives that we know we must fix relative to our customers, and we're working hard towards that end. So we've got to solve bus bunching, we need to solve slow zones, we need to be clean, and we need to provide clear communications. This is not the totality of what we need to get done, but this is at the very top of our list, and this is what I believe we're making progress on. So let me start talking about bus bunching. For those of you who are not regular CTA riders, you may not be as aware as our core customers are to this problem. But in essence, what it means is if you have a bus that is supposed to come every 10 minutes to a location, what happens is the buses aren't on schedule. And so sometimes it creates big holes between when the buses get there, and customers wait longer. Sometimes it means you'll see 2 buses coming together, and much less so than it used to be, but 3 or 4 buses traveling together. There's nothing more maddening to our customers than being out on a cold, freezing corner, waiting 20 minutes for a bus to only see 2 or 3 show up. We know that, and we're working it aggressively. So how are we working to solve bus bunching? Well, the first thing we did is we've been studying it. We asked, why does this phenomena happen? And there's really 4 reasons that buses bunch. One is bus operator behavior, okay? The drivers are not doing what we've asked of them, right? And this is the case just some of the time, right? But it is part of the problem. Part of it is street conditions, which means it's traffic. It's the way the street is set up, and it causes a backlog. 3 is our schedules don't make sense, which means we could have someone from NASCAR behind the wheel of the bus, and they wouldn't stand a chance. So we've got to change schedules. And 4 is how we do supervision. And supervision is when buses bunch, and it's unavoidable at times. How do we make the correction? So what we're doing across every single route on the system is we have GPS on the buses, and we have these route analytics that we're doing, and we ask the question for every route, what is the problem? And we are attacking the problem in that particular way. And I'm really excited to say we're making progress, and I believe by the summer it will be hugely noticeable to our customers. We know from the stats it's already noticeable, but people are already anchored in thinking a certain way, right? So they're looking not for the improvement, but they're looking for where it doesn't work. But by the summer, I think we'll have it beat. And there's a strategy associated with each of the pieces. So for example, if I talk about operator behavior, every bus garage general manager now gets on a weekly basis a report that down to the individual operator that shows what percentage of the time are they on schedule, and are they on schedule, what percentage of the time are they on schedule relative to their peers. And this is important because what we don't want to do with our operators who work very hard for us is do a gotcha. So we never talk about a specific incident, but we use the statistics from the data to say this is a pattern and practice of not following the schedule, and here's how you're doing relative to your peers. And we're seeing change in behaviors. We're looking at how we route our buses to avoid traffic. And by doing all of these things, I'm really excited to say that the trend year over year is going very, very well. So the red was 2006, and we started this in August, and the blue is 2007. So what you can see is when the programs really got going in September, we've dropped over last year, and we continue to move in a good direction. I'm very excited about the January statistics. And you might say, why would anyone be excited by a 0.1% drop in bunched buses? It's because in January of this year, we had 12.7 inches across 7 snow events versus 3.5 inches the prior January. And nothing messes up bus schedules more than snow. So if we were normalizing for snow, we think we'd be able to say there's real progress. Stay tuned. We're going to dog this forever and forever and forever until we have no bus bunching, which is not realistic, but it's our goal. Next is eliminating slow zones. Again, it's really interesting. When the CTA was built, our system was built to go 70 miles per hour. That's rapid transit. On a huge percentage of our line right now, we're at 15 miles per hour, right? It's terribly uninspiring to people who are on the L. And so we've got a Eliminating Slow Zones Plus project, and it really involves two things. One is we spent a lot of time researching before we put our current bids on the street for construction to ask what is the latest and greatest in track standards. We didn't want wooden ties with spikes, right? Because at the end of the day, the life is somewhat limited, but technology has evolved. This is our current standard, and I'll just say a few things about it. The ties are 100% recycled plastic. They're quieter, they last longer, they are made of old tires, so they're environmentally friendly. And we have specialized clamps that hold them that are E-clamps with 4 galvanized screw spikes. What does that really mean? It means that how we're rebuilding the track is not just to 55, but it's now at a 70 mile per hour standard everywhere we're rebuilding. It's safer, it will last longer, and it's a quieter ride. It's very hard to see, but on the picture on the right, you can see that the rail actually sits on a piece of rubber, which significantly reduces the vibration, both on the train and through the structure, reducing the noise on the system. So we are rebuilding in a way that should last significantly more than 30 years, and we're rebuilding with technology that should really enable us to move much faster. And so what percentage of the system are we going to publicly commit to so we can be held accountable for improving things for our customers? Well, in June, following the NTSB study of the derailment, we identified there were a lot of problems, and we did some, I think, very good soul searching within the CTA, restructured, reorganized, and took a very hard look at everything. What you saw immediately after that was that we more than doubled almost the amount of slow zones on the system, because we separated inspections, we gave our inspectors autonomy, we backed them up. Where there was a defect, they were to note it, and they were to slow down the train. We keep that command channel at the CTA completely independent so that we can ensure that the inspectors are always the fair brokers of safety and they don't mingle with anyone else. Their number one goal is safety, not speed or slow zones. And so we know as we eliminate slow zones, those guys have signed off on a way that's meaningful. What I'm very comfortable in saying is based on our current plans, we're going to get our slow zones down to 6.9% by the end of this year. Not only will we get them down to 6.9%, but a significant part of our system will go to 65 plus miles per hour. That's truly putting rapid back in transit. It's what our customers are asking for, and it's where we're committing to put our dollars. Clean is an especially challenging issue. When we talk internally at the CTA, I often say people will forgive us for an old system. People will forgive us at times for a 19-year-old bus breaking down, right? But people will simply not forgive us for providing a dirty system. And they won't forgive us for providing a dirty system because it signals that we don't care. It signals that we don't take pride in the organization and the CTA. And so clean is something that we've been very, very focused on. We are making good progress on the rail side, and this summer I think we will finally get momentum on the bus side. So I'm not here to say the buses are cleaner. I think they're a little bit cleaner, but they're far, far from where they need to be. Rail, we're making real progress on cleanliness, and I think by the summer it'll go. We're accomplishing this by changing the tools and the staffing structure by which we do this. So for example, if you take a look at GUM, which is the nemesis of transit, our folks on doing a general clean on a bus were spending one of their 4 hours to do a full detail on a bus, scraping gum with razor blades, right? Not a very good progress. We've identified new tools such as the Gum Buster tool that you see up there, which is pretty amazing, that dissolves gum in about 5 seconds. Now this may not sound like a big, interesting innovation, but let me tell you, the Gum Buster is taking us light years at the CTA. We're changing the tools by which our folks work in order to truly bring it forward. And it's also allowing us, without major staffing increases, to get our system cleaner. We're changing the chemicals, the tools, the formula that we're doing to get this done. By the way, Evedina Delgado, who's Vice President of Government Community Relations, I didn't introduce. I'm going to keep saying this. So, Evedina. Our goal on rail, and we're going to get even a tighter goal, is to do 21 days between deep cleans. These aren't the daily sweeps and mops. This is where we are steam vacuuming seats. This is where we are scrubbing floors, scrubbing systems. Our goal is 21 days. And you can see we are trending in the right direction. January was 35 days, and actually would have been lower, but because of the snow, we pulled a lot of people to do other things. But we're going to get it to 21 days. We believe, based on our testing, if you keep it up during the week, a 21-day cycle for a deep, deep, deep clean will make it look significantly different for the people who ride our system. Next, I'm going to talk about what we're doing to communicate. The CTA has been beaten up quite a few times on failing to communicate with our customers when things go wrong. Right? As we often talk about it, it's literally no different than the airplane pilot coming on and saying, we're waiting for clearance from the tower. Right? If people know, they're going to forgive us much more than if we keep them in the dark. While we don't have this problem solved, it's another place I believe we're making progress on. So talking to our customers, they said they want clear, straightforward information at home and at work before entering the pay area, right? Very interesting. We were spending a lot of time communicating people when they got to the platform. Now they've paid, and they've gone up the stairs to realize the train's not coming, right? It's a big innovation, but we're moving the signage to the front of the fare box. On the platform, when something goes wrong, at the bus stop, during their ride, and in an emergency. And interesting, but one of the things we're looking at for our training model, which we should be locking in before too long, is actually looking at the same training flight attendants get. It's not that different. When something goes wrong, you need very clear communication in an emergency to customers to give them direction, and I think the airlines have a good model there. Whoops, went the wrong way. So next is signage at our trains and bus stations. We're going to simple color-coded different kind of signage. We're going to mobile signage. That makes a lot of sense. Adam Case, who's sitting here in the front row, is the guy who's actually doing all this. I'm just describing it. We have a whole new focus on permanent signage. We did an analysis and we discovered 40% of our stations have outdated signage. So we've put together a new standard manual that is, I think, going to be very simple and clear for customers to understand and put together different kinds of signs. And so this is a really simple example. That's on the blue line, Harlem. We used to have A and B stops. So if you are a non-normal user of the CTA, you're on the blue line looking at a red sign. Aha. Right? Not necessarily that diametrically different, but to the people who don't use this every day, it's much cleaner, clearer signage that will make people understand it more. We looked at what London does. We looked at New York. We looked at Asia. And that is the standard by which we're changing all of our signage on the system. This is a very exciting innovation for us, and we're committed to getting this done within the next 18 months across the system. But we are going to be putting large digital displays on all the platforms that will tell our customers when the next train is coming. We're going to do this based on our current negotiations. For those who have waited a long time, we're going to do this with zero capital cost to the CTA and a positive revenue stream. Because by going with dynamic advertising on these particular signs, it's worth a huge amount of money. So what you may see is you may go to a sign at a station. The bottom will be telling you when your next train is coming. The top will be telling you if you go down the stairs to the right, there's a Connie's Pizza. Come on down, and you'll see a slice of pizza. That kind of advertising is monetized at a very huge value, and it's going to bring in a ton of money, and we won't spend a dime to get it done. The next thing is, some of you may have heard is Bus Tracker. It's being able to go on your PDA, BlackBerry, or other device and know when the next bus is coming. We will have it fully launched within the next year. And the first launch is going to be very soon. Noel Gaffney, who I didn't introduce either, who's my Vice President of Communications. Noel? I know where Noel's at. Right, Noelle always worries when I'm in front of a mic because she thinks we have all these great press stories we'll announce over a period of time, and we're afraid we're going to give up the goose at the front end, and she's right. But within the next month, we'll announce the first rollout and the schedule. People have said, well, why did you hold off on Bus Tracker when it was ready a while back? And I'll tell you why we held off, even though the technology was ready, is because until we had a sound strategy to fix bus bunching, until we knew our managers were responding to it, until we knew we were going to see a constant decrease in the incidence of bus bunching on our system, we didn't feel comfortable simply arming people with information that told them that 2 buses or 3 buses are coming down the street. Because they might be happier because they know, but it doesn't make them happier, right? At the end of the day, they want to wait the least amount of time. So we've armed our supervisors with information. The old days of the CTA guy with the clipboard, right, counting buses, will be gone by late summer. They're going to have laptops in their mobile vehicles, and they're going to be strategically deployed to those places where we need them. And so that's why we've held off on Bus Tracker. But now that we have a strategy and we're showing results, we believe it makes sense to roll it out to the public. Part of our advertising strategy and information is we're also going to be putting up, and right now the number looks well in excess of 200 digital urban panel displays that enter all subway locations. It'll tell you next train, other advertising. We're also experimenting with very innovative technology. And if you look at this technology, it's worth somewhere in the order of 4 to 5 times the value of a paper advertisement on the side of a bus. It's all part of our big strategy to bring more dollars in from non-fare box sources, and this will be coming to a bus near you within the next year. Only on the right side of the bus, by the way. Next, let me talk about the partnership. So that's what we're doing to really improve things for the customer today. That's nowhere to an exhaustive list, but it's the things that we're most focused on. Whoops. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the partnerships, right? And this is where I'll talk a little bit about Brian Fabes here. So one of the things we quickly realized at the CTA is that we know some things really well, and we know a lot of other things not so well. And so we said we needed to bring in private sector partners and intellectual capital from outside the government sphere to allow us to rethink how we're doing things. And Brian Fabes and the Civic Consulting Alliance has been a tremendous partner. And I'll talk a little bit about which each of those groups did, but their names just aren't up there for no reason. They're all have had boots on the ground for CTA, well in excess of $3 million of free pro bono consulting service to help us rethink what we do. So for example, Booz Allen helped us launch our performance management system, which are the basic metrics by which we manage the organization. IDEO, which is a really innovative company who does communications, they helped redesign the hotel room of Marriott and everything else, is helping us rethink the customer experience, and they've been a key player in rethinking how we do customer communications. Deloitte has helped us, and I'll talk a little bit about this in a minute, with Rail of the Future and construction management. Katzenbach Partners helped us rethink how we staff for cleanliness. Huron Consulting has helped us improve the control center, which is helping communications and get delays on the rail system down. McKinsey has been a tremendous partner of the CTA. They have had 2 teams on the ground pro bono for over 6 months. And a lot of the things that we're talking about today is the intellectual capital of our great CTA staff partnered with great McKinsey folks, thinking about where we need to go and asking the tough questions. And the 9-point plan I'll talk about has been that partnership of all these folks coming together. So that being said, those were the players who helped us think things through. The one that you saw in the middle there was obviously the RTA. That's the oversight for strategy and fiscal, who's also been at the table and thinking this stuff through. They've been very busy on the legislation, but now that the legislation's over, I know that they are going to be working hard on other pieces of this. So let me talk about the 9 pieces of our turnaround in terms of what we call transformational goals. How am I doing on time, Jay? Great? All right. So I'm going to go through these quickly, and I'm not going to talk about them all now because I'm going to talk about them individually. But we created 9 strategic goals for the authority because we needed a way to focus the organization on getting certain things done, right? So goal number 1 is increased ridership. Critical, right? It is our bread and butter asset. So if we take a look at our ridership potential, which is the first thing that we asked, I think this graph speaks in volumes to where transit can be and should be. So the left of this is 1901, the right is 2006. The red line is vehicle registrations, and the blue line is transit rides, right? And of course, this is a big shocker, right? As more people got cars, starting in the 1900s through now, transit declined. But if you look back to 1996, you can see that transit began to make a resurgency in terms of ridership. But if we look at our potential, right, this is the challenge. We got to get people out of their cars and onto transit wherever we can in terms of thinking about this in the future. So we talk about relative to each goal, there's a whole host of enabling initiatives. And I won't talk too much about too many of these other than to say we're doing a detailed demand study to understand where we should best put our buses and trains and schedules to pick up ridership where there's the greatest demand, how we pick up new customers. We're taking a look at increasing bus and train capacity across the system using existing resources. We are working hard on a bus rapid transit, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And we're looking at creative marketing strategies. So I'll talk about one creative marketing strategy that it's very genesis, but it involves when people buy airline tickets and are flying into Chicago to allow them to buy their pass to get on at Midway or O'Hare right with their airline ticket. And it's a way to get people to think about using the CTA who might otherwise just be thinking about a cab. We think this is going to work great when we get the Blue Line fixed. So let me talk about 2 other goals, and I'm going to go through these quickly because everyone will glaze over in about a second. But goal 2 is to increase the revenue, average revenue per service mile, and goal 3 is to decrease the cost per service mile, and I'll talk about how we're doing this. What does this literally mean? It means how we roll our buses and our trains, when and where, determines the amount of revenue we generate per each piece of equipment. So we're standardizing that to make sure that we're maximizing revenue and decreasing cost. You see the airplanes? It's because we're using an airline model. So one of my staff members who helped me look at this and asked, I said, all right, ask me some good questions. They said, okay, the airline industry's broke. Why are you choosing the airline industry, right? I said, think Southwest. And quite frankly, it's because they have a really good management model for financials that we can think about, and they use a hub and spoke and network system similar to ours. So if you're talking to an airline exec, they're thinking revenue per service mile and cost per service mile, and we're going to be no different. It's a standard that's going to allow us to make better questions of how we deploy our resources, and it's simple. It's total passenger revenue divided by total vehicle miles gives us our revenue. Total passenger revenue divided by total vehicle miles equals our cost. And based on this, we're making decisions. By doing this in-depth analysis, in our March shift of buses, we are shifting a huge amount of routes because we realized if we launch them from different garages, we're going to be able to reduce our cost per service mile by just deploying buses from different locations. Let me talk a little about some of the things we're doing on the cost side. A major cost driver for us is fuel. This is average miles per gallon from May to January, and we are trending in the right direction. We're getting this done 2 ways. One is we found religion relative to the things that impact fuel. So it's what is the tire pressure on the vehicle, how we're running the control systems on the vehicles are hugely important. And we're also replacing really old buses. And so the key for us is to control the cost of fuel. That number must continue to grow because the cost of fuel is continuing to grow. So we were at 2.8 miles per gallon. We're now at 3.2 miles per gallon. And as we keep experimenting on miles per gallon on our equipment, everything from how we use filters, we think we've got more play in this particular number. It also means we need our drivers to not slam on the gas and the brakes because it makes a difference. And we're going to find a way to do an education campaign to bring costs down there as well. Let me talk about what we're doing on the bus side again to make the organization leaner. And I'll talk about this quickly. But we discovered on bus maintenance that we have 5 tasks that account for 63% of the maintenance hours at the CTA. It's everything from oil change to system inspections, etc. And we realized that if we group this particular work, that we could then go ahead and save 25% of our mechanical times. So how do we do this? Well, if you look at the current workflow that's on here, for each of these things, we'd route a bus through 4 times to get each piece of work done. We realized by grouping it, you only route a bus through once. Doesn't sound that significant, but it's 200 minutes for our most used quantity of maintenance. And we got that down to 50 minutes in one test garage, and now we're going to roll it to the other 8 garages. Take a look at the 4,000-mile inspection and the difference here. What we were doing is we literally had a guy who was walking around doing different things at different places because we didn't carry the parts and the tools with them. And we literally did a spaghetti diagram, right? Following around our mechanics, understanding how they do this. Well, by following that and understanding it, we were able to get the 4,000-mile inspection down from 45 minutes to 25 minutes, and the guy's only got to walk 1,500 feet. We did this by giving them a rolling cart that had preset, specialized for them with all the tools and all the parts. When you're doing something like this hundreds of times a day, 45 minutes to 25 minutes adds up to a whole lot of money. Next, we introduced kitting. So what's kitting? Quite literally, mechanics would spend a lot of time walking back and forth to the shop window to get the flagoogle valve, right? To get this part, to get that valve. And we realized for what we pay mechanics, that is not a good value-add use of their time. So we're using some of our clerical staff who maintain the parts and equipment to kit things in white buckets for the mechanical guys before they start their work. So they walk up to the window, we hand them a kit with everything they need, and they avoid 4 or 5 trips back. This, in terms, is what we're going to use to drive costs down across the CTA and then reinvest those dollars into capital depreciation costs. And the results to our customer are obviously our most important thing, and the results are looking very, very good. These are bus runs held in for equipment. And so what this means is how many buses were never making it on the street because they weren't ready for service. And the numbers, I hate to say, were pretty big. And we've brought them down significantly. So the first 19 days of February, there were only 3 times where we didn't have a bus ready for service relative to this. What does this mean? It's had 2 interesting results for us. First of all, we realized our fleet could shrink. And so we're 2.1% fewer buses on our fleet than we had before, which directly reduces cost. When we compared our January to January miles, we also drove 250,000 more miles. Didn't necessarily see that one coming. But the reason that was is we had buses available on the street to field. And so before, where you would have holes in service, we now have the buses ready to go, and it means we're putting more miles on the street and providing our customers with more service. Other savings, obviously, that we've engaged in is we've eliminated 147 administrative positions. We've eliminated our legacy IT systems, and that will be done by the end of this year for $2.4 million. We've done simple things like adjust our payroll cycles of union and non-union employees, all to continue to drive costs down so that we can put those dollars back into providing better service. Goal number 4, non-fare box revenue. And this is what I talked about before, which was the concessions, the transient-oriented development, and the advertising. We have teams working very hard on all 3 of these strategies. We are projecting out what that will mean in terms of revenue we weren't receiving before, year 1 through year 5. And I'm not going to talk about the numbers publicly yet because Noel will beat me when I leave, rightfully so. But I can tell you they're very significant numbers. We're validating our assumptions, and once we do, we'll put it into the public domain. But again, our goal of being good stewards of the public trust is we're making sure that we can leverage everything that we can internally. I say that without wanting to create some misperception that we can somehow finance our own capital. We are in a $6 billion hole for a state of good repair. What we're saying here and what we're committing to is we will save everywhere we can, is that we will leverage every dollar that we can from other sources to pump into capital. But really, it will never fund what we need to get to a state of good repair. It will eat up a big piece of the pie of what we depreciate relative to our capital on an annualized basis, but it doesn't get us there. And so a legislative strategy to work on capital, it needs to be critical here. Goal 5 is customer satisfaction. I won't spend too much time here because I hit on the big things. But I can tell you that every Friday we have a performance management meeting where every manager in the organization in different areas has to present their stats. So the rail general managers come in and say, how many delays over 10 minutes did they have on their rail line? And we ask the question, why? Why did it happen? Why did it happen? Why did it happen? Why did it happen? To really understand the root cause. What that means is by having that level of accountability is delays are decreasing substantially on the rail system because we're trying to get to the root causes of them. Again, we won't get them where we need to be without capital. Goal 6 is to operate the safest metropolitan transit system. Safety is my number 1 concern at the CTA. You know, when you run a 100-year-old system, you worry a lot about safety. It means that if a new system the folks there need to be diligent, it means we need to be absolutely neurotic about safety. And when it comes to safety, we are neurotic. It's because we're a very old system with with infrastructure that's decaying. And so if we're not watching everything on safety, the opportunity for an accident is high. So let me talk about some of the enabling initiatives. We piloted something called DriveCam at our Chicago Avenue garage. And it's literally a technology that records G-forces, braking, acceleration on buses, feeds that on a daily basis to a computer system, and then presents reports to drivers on how they're doing. And then we provide them with training and supervision to try to improve this. We've had big decreases at our Chicago Avenue garage in terms of incidents related to safety. And so we're going to be looking to expanding that pilot after 2 more months of evaluation, but we think we'll get the bus system safer. We created a risk management team whose sole job is to look at risk of safety. And so they're doing everything. For example, they looked at the top 10 locations where we have bus accidents. They look at where do we have safety violations. And they dog it, and then they look at the root cause to make things better. Signals are a concern of safety. We're upgrading the computer systems. It'll not only reduce to fewer delays and better diagnostic tools, but it will help us with real-time monitoring. That's an actual Clark Junction signal box. And it's 100% manual at this point. Signals are the things that keep trains from running into each other. So it's no difference than a red, yellow, green. Why are signals so important? because in a place like the subway, by the time a operator would see the car in front of them on a curve, they could never stop before striking the car in front of them. So having signals that work well is critical. We've increased our inspection cycle. We've hired other independent inspectors. We have separated, much like we did on the track following NTSB, the guys who inspect the signal system from folks who are fixing it to ensure that we're getting the right kind of inspections in place. We're investing in a maintenance management information system, which is a database to track our 250 miles of track in real time. It'll not only provide us real-time slow zone data, it'll provide workforce controls, work prioritization, and help us really, in a very tactical way, plan on getting and keeping the system in a state of good repair. One quick note on the GPS tracking of employees. All of our rail janitors now have GPS devices. It was a very popular week at the CTA. But it's working very, very well. We had a whole lot of growing pains. Tom should be shaking his head. But when we gave the rail janitors GPS devices, wow. It was a great thing. And to the credit of our workforce and the leadership, we worked back and forth to figure out what are the rules of engagement for the GPS devices. We're not totally through all the pains of it, but it's working really, really well, and our folks are embracing it. We gave them tools with these devices that they wanted, and so it's a win-win, and I think we're seeing our productivity increase substantially. And we're going to be providing GPS devices to all of our mobile workforce to make sure that we know where they're at, we can provide them with assistance, and we can add safety. Because if we know where they're at, we also know where we need to slow the trains down, which is critical for people working on a railroad. Goal 7 is to maximize the value of capital dollars. And this is the example I gave of the bus on the assembly line to reduce costs, about replacing every fourth tie every other year. We're coming up with a plan to ensure that once we invest in capital, we're going to make that capital last. Goal number 8 is one that is slightly out of our control, but we're going to lobby like crazy. And that's to secure the $6.8 billion that we truly need to make the CTA a world-class system. Goal number 9 is to design and finance a world-class CTA. Why is this only at the end? Because we really believed that unless we get goals 1 through 8 right, the public will never give us permission to dream big and act on goal 9. If people are going 15 miles per hour in a slow zone, if they are waiting 25 minutes for 2 buses to show up, if they're not on a clean bus or a train, and we stand up and say, this is the future, right, they will not back us up. That is the brutal facts. So this year has been spent, and 2008 will be spent on fixing those things very substantially so that we are given permission to dream big and that we win the faith of our ridership and the public that the CTA is an organization worth investing in. And I believe we're going to get there. But that being said, let's just peek and say, what might the future look like a little bit in terms of the final goal of how we design and build this? This was yesterday. And it's express fare card vending machines. Aha, plastic at the station. This is a $4 million initiative so that people can use their ATM and credit card at the stations. We believe this will more than pay for itself because we believe before if you were going to put $5 in the machine, if you're buying it with your credit card, we hope that you buy 10. We're even going to be training our customer assistants at the station to upsell. Right? So if you've got someone who's there and they're showing the machine, right, they say, guess what? If you buy the $20 pass, you get the $2 discount, right? If we were a private sector corporation, our CAs would be huge marketers to try to get people to upsell to the bigger, better pass. We think no differently, and we hope that this will actually do great things for revenue. But more importantly, the reason that I put this up here is we are rethinking the fare card system altogether. We are in a bold, brave new world where the CTA has no business even being in the fare card business. And what we are doing now is beginning the meaningful discussions with banks and others to say, look, we don't need to be in the fare card business. There's Visa Smart Cards and other fare medium that makes more sense. The Oyster Card in London are the leaders in this area. They're really thinking about why as a transit company are we even involved in dealing with fares, right? If we can go to a click on a Visa and allow people to maximize savings through that system, we can get out of this business altogether. And I got to tell you, the fare system is very, very expensive. New York has done some pilots. We hope to launch a pilot before too long. But we will be asking the question in a world that's evolving even annually is why are we in the fare business? We should move that to other ways to pay. People should be paying with their cell phones. They should be paying with credit cards and other means. And we should have a third party who can monetize the advantage of having the largest ATM network in the city, that can monetize the value of being first to market in this particular region with what will truly be a cashless society in the future, that has value. CTA wants to sell that value because we get nothing from it. So stay tuned to what we plan to do with the fare card world. Next is watch for what we are planning on doing on bus rapid transit. 10 months ago, when the mayor forwarded my name and recommended to the board, and I hope they're not regretting it at this moment, to be the president of the CTA, he gave a huge bunch of challenges, right? Many of the things I've reviewed today are the things that the mayor has challenged us to think about and rethink about. Bus rapid transit is yet another area where the mayor has been really pushing us to say, think big in this area. And so we're taking steps to go towards bus rapid transit. The CTA has got to be a better value than a car. We know we're going to be cheaper, and now we're working to say we can guarantee you that we're going to be faster, and we're going to get you there more reliably. So we've ordered 150 60-foot buses that are BRT programmed, which means we can open both doors, we can slide the doors to enable this to happen. These are all ultra-low sulfur hybrid buses that are 90-foot buses. They are 77% more fuel efficient than the buses we're replacing. It's pretty amazing in terms of what the fuel efficiency can drive here. So we don't have the capital, so how can we afford this? Well, to do these 150 buses, we realized we get no value from capital depreciation, right? But much like United or other airlines lease their planes because someone gets to write off that depreciation, right? Whether it's GE Capital or others, we said let's test the market and see how it would work on the market. And we did great by leasing these buses. So our cost to lease per bus is $88,000 a year. Super conservative, right? We assumed a 50% reduction in the fuel efficiency on these buses, even though Seattle's getting it in the 70% range. It would save us $6,100 per bus. It would save us $14,000 on the labor side because it's a 90-foot versus a 60-foot bus. We would save $26,000 based on our actual maintenance costs today off of these buses, which is $46,000 saving off that bus. So it offsets the price by 52%. We also would yet again reduce our fleet by replacing 200 of our oldest buses with these 200 buses. So we'd be over 5% in fleet reduction and provide a better customer experience. The first such bus will be in Chicago in August, and by then we'll be announcing how and where we're going to be rolling out bus rapid transit. We have an order for new CTA trains, and I won't talk too much about these trains other than to say they are sexier, they're safer, they're quieter, they're more reliable, and they're coming to a city near you within the next 2 years. This is a rendition. We're spending a lot of time on the inside of the train. The outside won't look that different. To be much more customer-friendly, much more user-friendly, we're going to have information screens on the inside. We're going to have better emergency communication systems on them. Concepts like escape path lighting from airplanes that will make a lot of sense in an emergency. And I'm excited to say this is concrete. So these are things that are actually coming and have been ordered. Then I'm going to just, before I conclude here, jump very quickly to the future. We're asking and comparing all the world's technologies to ours. And when we say when we expand and we know at some point we need to replace the L, what should be the technology? Deloitte helped us quantify and do an analysis of all the world's rail systems, what it costs to build a kilometer of rail, compare the cost of ownership of a new system versus our system. And what you can see here is the blue is heavy rail, the red is monorail, the yellow is light rail, and the green is BRT. And those are all the world systems. So you see Hong Kong, Vancouver, San Francisco, San Juan, DC, Copenhagen, Hong Kong. And we did a comparison. What are the technology they're using and what makes sense to us? So what did the Deloitte study tell us, right? We asked the questions, what is the ideal vision for rail of the future? What's the existing technology? What are the capacities? What would be the cost of these technologies? What we found out is that what we have is heavy rail. In many locations, heavy rail just makes sense. This is what Paris, Hong Kong, Madrid, New York, London, Vancouver are all building and have. And it's similar to what we have. Now, the trains may be different, but it's a heavy rail system. We're taking a look at light rail technology. Light rail technology in the rail industry is innovating at an unbelievable pace. It is overall, in many ways, getting cheaper, and the technology is evolving very, very quickly. Heavy rail, it seems to me, is not evolving as quickly. We took a look at monorail. I can tell you hands down, the metrics on monorail don't look good. It's pretty for Disney, would not be pretty for Chicago. Urban maglev. Now, for those of you who may take the brown or purple line in and you go by the curve, there's an Absolute vodka commercial that's up there. And it's got a picture of a bullet train on the CTL tracks, right? And every time I go by that, I do something. there is this major schism and gap between what people want and expect to see and what actually makes sense in the world of rail of the future. But I said, so we need to study it. So it's called urban maglev. It runs at 100 miles per hour, okay? And here's the problem with urban maglev in Chicago. For it to work at all, stations have to be at least 10 miles apart. So for an absolute world, you need to drink a lot of vodka, because if you don't, the math doesn't make any sense, right? For urban maglev in our environment, certainly given the fact that most of our stations are anywhere between a quarter to half a mile to a couple miles away, not to mention the price tags in the billions. So here is what we really do think may make sense for part of the future here, and this is from, I believe this one is from Bordeaux in France. This is the evolution of what is a street-level rail, light rail system that's very cheap, right? Very cheap is still big bucks. But here's the innovations that make sense. You can't really see it, but you see a rail running down the middle. That is the electrified rail that only actually activates when the train's on it, which makes it very safe. You can run this thing in many places on basic streets. So you're not, once you put the rail and electrical infrastructure in, so you're not building massive structures. It boards and unloads at curbs, and it makes a lot of sense. What makes this particular technology right now so attractive for us to even think about is they've just evolved it with battery packs. So that what the train does is it's always charging its batteries and can travel up to a mile with no third rail or no electric support whatsoever. That means that technically you can have big gaps where literally all you're doing is putting two rails in the ground and operate this train. We think something like this may make a lot of sense. We're on the genesis phase of thinking about this, but we need to capture people's attention and excitement thinking forward of where we're going to go with this. If you take a look at where this is in France, you run it on grass and it leaves almost no footprint. So if you can imagine something like this running on the lakefront, running through Grant Park, it leaves no footprint almost whatsoever. And it's just two tracks over grass. It's very environmentally friendly and we think could make a lot of sense. Just for kicks, we put one through a Navy Pier there. No actual plans for that, let the official record reflect. We're just brainstorming, looking at what technologies we think may make sense. Here's another version. This has the wiring overhead. Anyway, with that, I'm going to conclude. I think it's a very exciting time at the CTA. I think we have a good plan. We're committed to improving. It's our current motto, and making things better. I think 2009 is going to be a breakout year for the CTA. 2008, we're going to put our customers through a fair amount of inconvenience because we'll be tearing up the tracks to eliminate slow zones and other things, but we're committed to doing it in a way that is least disruptive for them, and I think it's an exciting time. With that, I thank everyone for their attention.
Kind of late. We'll just take one question. Let me just say, Ron, we usually like to have a little more detailed presentation. But, Kathy, give your question, make it short, and make it polite.
No, I already saw him off the cake, so I'm going to be nice enough. So I'm very present.
You're a very lucky man.
What's the loss of income from all those senior stations?
We don't know is the honest answer. We believe, last year we provided 20 million rides at $1. So we know that impact is 20 million. But here's what we don't know. We know that there's a lot of seniors who never bothered to register for the program who are paying full fare, right? Those folks we believe are going to opt into the free program. So until those folks do that and we know how many people were paying full fare who are seniors, we really don't know the answer. But we know it's at least 20 million.
On most days, I ride the CTA bus twice a day. During rush hour, I have noticed that within a 6-block period that 30 people did not pay because they're squished in. There's several people on there that have a fistful of expired CTA cards because after a while the driver says just, go on there. What is being done that we can collect this kind of revenue from people?
I think there's two big things we're doing. One is we get these 90-foot buses in, where we're 60-foot buses, where we're operating 40-foot buses that are capacity. You're going to see the bigger buses on those routes. Two is we're always looking to improve security. And as we improve the systems that people use to pay to get on the system, we think we'll see improvements there as well. But it's a big challenge for us.
I have one favorite story. I was waiting at the Blue Line in the Thompson Center, and there were about 6 kids. Well, they were old enough to know better. And the one guy looked at me. He says, "Do you work for the CTA?" And I said, "Yeah." And they all jumped the turnstile after I left.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi. Quick, this is quick. What, if any, effect is this horrible, dastardly, ill-thought-out, bloated Cook County sales tax going to have on the CTA now that you have a piece of the action in terms of sales tax dollars?
I can't pretend to comment. We've got our hands full managing the CTA, so I certainly can't say. But we're hoping, Director Topinka of the RTA Board, that it is not a big hit to people opting out of the area to buy things and won't impact our 1/4% sales tax. With that, I know we need to finish. I just want to thank all of you for your attention. And I also, I have to tell you, the last 10 months have been incredibly fun and exciting. And I want to thank my board, and I want to thank Mayor Daley for this position. The mayor's been a great partner and visionary in kind of driving this. And the fact that he gave me the opportunity to do these kinds of things is something that I'm just hugely grateful for. Thank you.